Yo, what's going on, guys? EK9 here, bringing you guys another video. So today's video is going to be a little bit different, but we are going to be doing some hockey talk. So this video is going to cover the top 5 winners and losers of this season. And we'll start with the losers. There's been a lot of talk about some of these teams, about where they're going to head, and some of them very disappointing playoff losses. And our first team is going to be the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think a lot of people could have predicted that, but the Leafs are definitely the first team we're going to talk about. So if you guys look at the Leafs offense, they do have a very strong offensive core. They got a lot of their players locked in. They got Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares, and they take up nearly half of the cap space of the Leafs. So the Leafs do have a bit of cap issues, but they do have a very strong offensive core. Now, what's really scary about the Leafs is when you take a look at that defensive cores of theirs. They do have Morgan Rielly, Tyson Barrie, Jake Muzzin, Cody Ceci. Barrie didn't have the greatest year in Toronto. He didn't seem to excel too well. Morgan Rielly's been the catalyst of the Leafs for the last few years now, and they've got Muzzin, so they've got an okay defensive core, but they leave Freddie Anderson out to dry half the time. But what makes the Leafs a loser this year is definitely their lack of defense. So after this season, they are more than likely going to be losing Tyson Barrie. The Leafs are already having some issues with the cap space because of how much their 4 forwards take up in Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander. Maybe one of them get moved at the end of the season to pick up a defenseman, but there is an overarching theme that the Leafs defensive core is just not up to the standards of what it takes to win a championship or even get out of the first round, as they've lost every single time they've made it to the first round, including to Washington back-to-back against Boston, and then this year against Columbus, and not even the first round, the qualifying round. So that's even more embarrassing for the Leafs. But I will give Columbus credit in that series. They were a very good team. They look like they are very strong. They're going to be a team that we actually do mention in this video as well. Another thing that's really makes the Leafs a loser of this season is that they are not going to have a first-round pick this year. So the Leafs do have quite a bit of they got quite a few prospects in Robertson. They've got Sandin. They've got a lot of talent in the development program in the Marlies, but they are going without a first-rounder. They will surrender that pick to the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Hurricanes are looking phenomenal this year. So adding another first-rounder to the Hurricanes will just give them more to move around. So the Leafs have to surrender that. The agreement was with Patrick Marleau when the Leafs did trade him to Carolina, and the Hurricanes inherited that the cap hit of $6 million, that the Leafs would have to surrender a pick. Now, if the pick was if it was a top 10 pick this year, the Leafs would maintain it, and the 2021 would automatically go to Carolina. But if it was not in the top 10, then it would go to Carolina, and it was not in the top 10 since they did not win the Lafreniere sweepstakes, and it now goes to Carolina. So the Leafs do lose that pick. And another thing that makes them losers is not necessarily the team here, but when they were up 3-0 that one game against Columbus, and Columbus came back and won that 4-3, and then the next game they played a back-to-back the next night, were down 3-0, came back and won, did the exact same thing Columbus did, got all their fans excited. They got the whole Leaf Nation rallied, and then that last game, they couldn't do anything. Their big offense didn't come up to shine. Tavares hit the goalpost on a wide-open net. Everything just went wrong for them, and I think that's just a defining factor with Toronto hockey lately. So we'll move on to our second team now. This team I don't really want to talk about. They are my favorite team, if you guys haven't known, and that's the San Jose Sharks. The San Jose Sharks were a disaster this season. They had no sense of anything. They looked horrible. They had a couple injuries. Hurdle's out. They lost to Carlson, and they looked terrible. This team's got a lot of issues moving forward, and that has to do with age. The Sharks Doug Wilson seems to have it in his mind that the more veterans that you have, the better the team, which is true to a certain extent, but you want to have your mix of veterans and younger talent. You want speed, but you also want leadership. and you can't just you can't have one or the other. You need to have a mixture of both. So relying on the veterans with Wilson has been a huge cause. And not only that, the Sharks, with that Carlson trade, did surrender their first round pick this year. And if you guys didn't know, Sharks finished near the bottom, and Ottawa ended up getting a third overall pick this season, which is going to be Tim Stützle. And, well, more than likely going to be Stützle. But the Sharks losing that pick, that's huge. That could have been a big, big turnaround for them. And instead, they are left with nothing. However, they do have Tampa's pick, but it's probably going to be a later pick, considering unless Columbus does pull out the upset, they might get a mid first round out of that. But more than likely, probably not going to happen. The Sharks do have a lot of issues with long contracts. They have Couture signed to a long deal, Hurdle signed to a long deal, they've got Evander Kane signed to a long deal, Timo Meier to a long deal, and then on defense, they've got Bernsey signed till he's like 38, 39, Vlasic signed long-term, Carlson signed long-term, and then one of the worst contracts right now on the team is got to be Martin Jones. He looked very good in his first couple of years in San Jose, and has since he doesn't look like he's even starter material anymore. Maybe he needs a fresh start, but I don't think any team is going to take on that $6 million cap hit. It's going to leave the Sharks to maybe consider buying him out. But the Sharks do have a bit of advantage with the cap situation, as a couple of the buyouts are going to be up. Paul Martin is one of them. And they have a couple others, so they will have a little bit more cap space. They don't have to sign too many forwards, but one of them is going to be Kevin Lebank, and I imagine Kevin Lebank's going to try and hit the bank this year after taking a cut in a paycheck to keep the Sharks in contending position. That didn't end up happening, not even close. With the loss of Joe Pavelski, Jonas Donskoy last year, this team was, bound to not be as strong, but no one thought that the Sharks would be this bad, and it really shows. So on to our third team, our third loser, and this team out of the qualifier, they put all of their eggs into one basket, didn't end up going their way, and that's the Nashville Predators. Bringing in Matt Duchene this year, they were pretty psyched about that. Bringing in Mikael Granlund from Minnesota by trading Kevin Fiala. This team looked to be a team that was very strong, very promising, only to get upset in the qualifying round by the Arizona Coyotes. Not to discredit the Coyotes, but it's very shocking that the depth of Nashville didn't bring them through the first round. Look at their offensive core. Forsberg, Johansson, Granlund, Arvidsson, Duchene, Yarncrow. They've got strong depth in Bonino and Smith, Grimaldi, Kyle Turris on the fourth line. And we will be talking about Kyle Turris in this as well. And they went all in this year. They do have a bit of cap to work with, so they might be able to make some changes. I know the GM said there's definitely going to be changes in Nashville, and that's expected after losing in the qualifier. This team made the finals couple years ago, not too long ago, when they lost to the Penguins, and they didn't even look like they were remotely close to a cup finalist. They looked good. Darcy Kuemper stood on his head. Arizona, they played good, but I mean Kuemper played up phenomenal. But that offense of Nashville has to step up. They needed to be stronger. They weren't, and it cost them big time in that. So they're going to be in some trouble for a little bit, I think. I don't know if they're going to rebound after this. And that's the other thing, is Kyle Turris has a long contract at $6 million. And Kyle Turris, as you guys can see, on that fourth line for Nashville, he hasn't been producing. He hasn't looked good. And nothing against Kyle Turris. I loved him back in Ottawa, but since he's come to Nashville, he's been he's been a bust. He has not looked good at all. His point production's dropped dramatically, and I think that maybe they should consider a buyout. I don't know if any team's going to take him on at $6 million. Maybe a team that needs cap, like Detroit or something, might consider it. But rather than that, I don't see any team taking a chance on Turris. Our next team is actually a team that didn't make the playoffs, and they actually finished worse in the NHL and ended up slipping in the draft, and that's Detroit. So Detroit does have a lot of issues surrounding them, and that's not just surrendering that first overall. Well, they didn't even surrender it. They didn't even win it. They didn't even come in the top 3 after having one of the worst seasons in recent NHL history. Not even close. What makes this team a loser, in my opinion, you guys can argue with me if you want, is the amount of contracts they have to re-sign. Manthis contract's up. Bertuzzi's contract's up. They have a few others, Perlini and Fabry. Their contracts are up at the end of the season. If they don't get to re-sign any of those players, they're going to be starting fresh. Now, mind you, they do have a lot of cap space. They are going to be able to maybe sign some free agents, but I mean, they're going to be losing a bit of their core if they don't. Hopefully, they can re-sign Mantha and Bertuzzi for sure. Perlini and them are definitely good to have as well, but they're going to need to really consider making some major moves. Defensively, they need to pick up some defense. I know they got Madison Bowie. He's pretty decent young gun. Philip Hronik, another one. But they're going to need to add someone big here, and they're going to need to pick up a goalie. There's a lot of missing pieces to this puzzle of this Detroit Red Wing team, and not getting the first overall pick is going to hurt them quite a bit. I think they're going to end up probably getting Lucas Raymond is probably where they sit, but that's still not going to be enough to help this team anytime soon. Hopefully Zadina starts producing more. He starts to feel his, get into his stride there and start producing and be the great prospect that he was projected to be. But Detroit looks like they are in a dumpster fire right now. They got a lot of inner issues going on, and their team is slacking hardcore. So it's going to be tough to see what goes on to Detroit this next year, but they're definitely a loser for this year. And last but not least is the New Jersey Devils. I had a lot of hope in this team this season. They very much disappointed me. After winning the first overall pick and drafting Jack Hughes, I thought for sure they were going to be a strong team. They got 2 number 1 overall picks in the last few years, also getting Nico Hischier, who has turned out to be the better pick over Nolan Patrick. Not to discredit Patrick there. He's had some concussion injuries and injuries that have stunned his career a little bit, but they definitely got the better pick out of it with Hischier. He's been a very good player in the NHL. He's made the All-Star game. But this team doesn't have a clear sense of direction. And this team, they got a lot of young talent. They've got, most of their players pretty young rather than like Zajac and Gusev. Even Kyle Palmieri's getting up there. A lot of young talent. But the thing is, you need to have that perfect mix that I was talking about with the Sharks, where this is too much young guns. They need to start building up that team a little bit. They did have Wayne Simmons. He got injured. I don't know if they traded him. I haven't been aware of that. But then they got PK Subban here. I thought this team was going to look awesome. Thought they were going to be really good. Will Butcher had a really strong year last year. Damon Severson. But then they traded away Sammy Vatanen. They made a couple big moves. And this team's starting to look worse now. They have to re-sign Mackenzie Blackwood. They have Corey Schneider, who they sent to the AHL. He's $6 million a year, so that's a huge cap hit, and they might have to end up buying him out or something. I'm not sure what they're going to do with that contract. And then they got to re-sign Mackenzie Blackwood. This team doesn't seem to have a clear sense of direction moving forward. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys let me know, but definitely a loser in my opinion. So that wraps up our 5 losers. So let's talk about who were the winners so far this year. And the first has to be this team right here, who has been, a team to talk about. And that is the Ottawa Senators. So what makes the Ottawa Senators a winner this year, even after a horrible season? And there's 2 things that can definitely sum this up. Is the Ottawa Senators now have the 3rd overall pick, as well as the 5th overall pick. Team, they're only getting better with time. They got Brady Tkachuk. They got Duclair. Duclair does need to be re-signed, but they definitely have the cap space for that. So this team moving forward, they're going to be pretty good. They got Drake Batherson. They've got some young talent. Adding the number 3 and number 5 to their team is going to be pretty huge. So I'm thinking that they're going to look really good. And what makes them even better is not only do they have the number 3 and 5, they also have the Islanders' first-round pick as well. And the way the Islanders are playing, it's going to be a later-on pick, but another first-round pick that they could use to their advantage. Maybe use it in a trade. They could either draft some talent, but they're going to be a team to talk about. They're doing the right things. They're looking better and better each move they make. And everyone, including myself, said Ottawa lost that trade. Ottawa lost the Carlson trade. But if you look back at it now, it's the same thing with the Matt Duchene trade in Colorado. They won this trade. This was huge for this organization. They're looking even better. And not only that, they're going to free up quite a bit in cap space because Callahan's 5.8 LTIR contract is up, as well as Clark MacArthur's. And they really only have to re-sign Logan Brown or Connor Brown, and they have to re-sign Anthony Duclair. So they don't have a lot to re-sign there. And I think that this team moving forward, they're definitely in the right direction. So next, our next winner here is a surprising one. Surprising. And that is the Columbus Blue Jackets. I said we were going to mention them in the video. We are. And if you look at their team, the Columbus, they're not that strong offensively. They don't look like they're too depth. But this team plays with so much heart. John Tortorella is doing a phenomenal job. You guys can hate Tortorella all you want, but he is doing a great job in Columbus. Their defensive core, they have probably the best first-line defensive pairing in the NHL with Werenski and Jones. You guys can debate me on that. I'm definitely up for a debate, but definitely think that this is, if they're not number 1, definitely a top 3. They are phenomenal. And this team has been playing unreal hockey as of late. They went to 5 overtimes with Tampa, and this team never gave up. They never gave up against Toronto. They never gave up against Tampa. They beat Tampa the other day. They beat them 3-1. They play tonight at 7:30. This team is looking like they might be able to squeak off an upset against Tampa. I mean, Tampa is missing Stamkos right now. They're not as strong as they are, but definitely a tougher team to play. Finishing, they are the 2nd seed in the East, so definitely a tough team to play against. And these Blue Jackets play with so much heart. There's a lot of talk at the beginning of the season. They lost to Zingle, they lost Duchene, they lost Panarin, they lost Bobrovsky. That's a big chunk to lose. And not only did they lose them, they lost them all at once, and they got nothing out of that. It was all in free agency. Panarin wanted a big market. Bobrovsky wanted to leave, and honestly, Bobrovsky leaving has probably been the best thing to happen for the Blue Jackets. And Bobrovsky's a hell of a goalie. I'm not disputing that. He is a fantastic goaltender. But to see the rise in the backups in Columbus has been unreal. Elvis Merzlikins and Jonas Korpisalo, 2 fantastic goalies. I don't know if you guys have been witnessing Jonas Korpisalo in the playoffs, but this man is putting on a show, and he is looking better than ever. I mean, he stopped the first 57 shots he faced in the playoffs, and since being pulled against the Leafs, has stopped the last 154 of 158 shots. The guy is a beast, and he is looking good. This team has a lot of heart. They don't give up. I mean, after those 2 back-to-back overtimes against Toronto and then playing in a 5th overtime against Tampa and losing, they come back and win. And this team should be exhausted, but if you watch them play, they play with so much grit, so much heart, and honestly, PLD's looking phenomenal. Liam Foudy, they got Alex Texier. Those are some great upcoming players, and they are looking better and better the more you watch them. So definitely going to give them the plus there. And their defensive core and their goaltenders have been phenomenal, so they are a winning team this season, in my opinion. Think that they definitely shut up the critics about them, and for good reason with that. The next team we will talk about is a team that did make the qualifiers. They lost, but they still ended up a winner. So what team are we talking about now? Yes, guys, the New York Rangers. The Rangers are a team that needed this first rounder. They got the first overall, and they are probably the happiest team in the NHL at the moment. Already, they are a really young team. They are pretty good, and they get the #1 overall pick. They had the #2 last year. They drafted Capo Caco. Now they get Alexis Lafreniere. They've got two really good prospects. Well, unless they don't draft Lafreniere, I'm pretty sure they will. They won the sweepstakes. Quinton Byfield's going to be second, I'm guessing. So adding Lafreniere is going to be huge to this team's depth. This team's got a lot of young guns. They got a lot of talent. They're going to look better and better. And I think the first overall pick bumps this team out of rebuild in 2 years. I think this team's a contending team in 2 years because of this, and they are just jumping for joy. I think they're probably the happiest team in the NHL at the moment, rather than whoever wins the cup. And not only that, they have all their key forwards locked down. They have Zibanejad locked down, Kreider's still locked down, Panarin. The only one they really have to worry about is Strome. On defense, they got Trouba locked up. D'Angelo soon he needs a contract. Goaltenders, this is another thing I want to talk about. Yes, Henrik Lundqvist has got a very big contract. It's going to be up in a few years, but they already have their next starters in place. Igor Shesterkin is going to take over. He looks phenomenal and a promising goalie. And then they have Georgiev as the backup. So they have two strong goalies already willing to take over the role and inherit the throne from the king himself. They are ready for it. The Rangers look like they have a clear plan, and I don't think they were expecting to get the #1 overall pick, but that just plays even more to the benefit of this team, who's already looking promising in their rebuild. They've done a great job rebuilding this organization, and I can see them being a cup contender in the next 3 or 4 years. The next team we will talk about is a team that if you are Don Cherry, you don't like, but if you are anyone else, you probably enjoy them a lot. The Carolina Hurricanes. They are a great young team with tremendous talent and heart, and they have so much depth on this team. It's unreal. Offensively, you got Svechnikov, you got Aho, you got Teravainen, Trocheck, Neckis. You've got Niederreiter, Fogle, Jordan Stahl. You've got Williams, Dzingel. What doesn't this team have? They've got size. They've got skill. They've got speed. They are everything that you're looking for in a team, and they are definitely one of the favorites in the East, and I definitely think this team can go all the way. Defensively, Jakob Slavin. They've got Dougie Hamilton, Jake Gardiner, Brady Shea, Sammy Vatanen, and Joel Edmondson, and that's still without Brett Pesce as well. They have Hayden Fleury as well in the system as well. So this team is very strong looking. Slavin and Hamilton alone, two great defensemen. They add Brady Shea, and they are surrendering that first rounder of theirs to the New York Rangers. So the Rangers do get that pick. That's another thing I forgot to mention is the Rangers do get another first round pick this season from the Carolina Hurricanes. So that's another thing to talk about. But they've got such a tremendous team. The only thing that lacks, in my opinion, with this Hurricane is their goaltending. They've got two average goalies, none of them that stand out. They don't really have a true starting goalie, but they have two backup goalies that are pretty consistent and pretty good. That's the one weakness of that team. And what makes them even better as a team is most of their players are locked down. They have Aho locked down, Stahl locked down, Teravainen. They've got quite a few. They only have to re-sign a couple of players, and they definitely do have the cap space for that because I believe Marlowe's ends this season. I'm not 100%. Don't quote me on that, guys, but they definitely have the cap space to get away without being injured too much. The last team I will talk about is a team that everyone probably projects will go the distance this year, and that is the Colorado Avalanche. This team is phenomenal. They are the real deal. There's definitely some honorable mentions. Vegas could definitely be talked about this season, but I figured they're you know, all the other teams definitely had more to talk about than them. But look at this. They got McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, Burakovsky, Kadri, Donskoy, Nichushkin, Comfort, Jost, Nieto, Belmer, and Matt Calvert. Like, they've got some great forward depth. This team is definitely the most depth team in the NHL. You got their defensive core. They've got Ryan Graves, Cale Makar, Eric Johnson, Sammy Girard, Ian Cole, and Zadorov. Johnson and Cole, some great veterans, definitely teaching Makar's, Girard, Zadorov, and Graves definitely some knowledge on how to be better defensive players. Cale Makar is having an unreal season. The guy's a real deal. He's definitely, in my opinion, the next Bobby Orr, if we were to ever say anything like that. He is tremendous on the ice, great foot speed. The guy is a great skater, great awareness, and I just think this guy's going to be the real deal in the NHL. Give him a couple years, and this guy's going to shine. Definitely a Calder favorite rather than Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes could be another player that we could talk about all day. And in net, they got Grubauer. Grubauer's been playing pretty good. And they've got Pavel Francouz. He's definitely a decent goalie, decent backup. Colorado is definitely a team to talk about. And what makes Colorado so special as well is all of their players, most of their big guys, McKinnon and Landeskog, they all took pay cuts so they could sign more players and have a better chance of winning. And most of their players are actually locked down. The only forwards they really have to re-sign at the end of the season are Burakovsky and Nemesnikov rather than Val Nichushkin. So they've got some great depth, and the fact that they only have to re-sign Burakovsky and Nemesnikov shows that this team is locked down for the next few years, and they're going to be a team to talk about for the next few years. And they're going to have some more cap space freed up because they did retain half the salary of Tyson Barrie, as well as they have Colin Wilson on his contract's ending at the end of the season. I don't think they re-sign him. So definitely going to free up some cap space. This team's going to have more cap to work with. They're going to be able to re-sign those guys, and they're going to be looking good for the next few years. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Let me know if you guys disagree with me on anything, if you guys agree, anything like that. Let me know what you guys think about the playoffs. Who do you guys think is going to win the cup? Do you think Colorado's going to go all the way? Do you think a team like Columbus could surprise? Let me know. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we got some more great content coming up. Alright guys, have a good one. See you guys soon.